In the name of religion, the world is beset with violence, and much of this stems from ignorance and misconceptions about each other.
The topic that we want to discuss today is fundamentalism, from the perspective of the three different monotheistic faiths. Let's start with just a definition. Quickly, a definition of what is fundamentalism.
The notion of fundamentalism is taking a very literal view with a broad scope of interpretation on what essentially God expects of us.
In the Muslim world, what we call fundamentalism is really Puritanism.
Fundamentalism has very little to do with religion and faith.
Christian, Muslim, Jewish fundamentalists had more in common with each other than they had with the more liberal wings within their own faith tradition.
Classic acts of God, they produce fear. And when fear takes hold, truth goes out the window, because you want now not the truth, but security.
Right.
And if somebody's offering you that security,
manipulating situations.
And you have the leadership inciting young people to say that, you are occupied, so you have a right to actually retaliate. And if that means that you're going to use suicide bombs or that you are going to actually kill, which is not what the message of Islam.
Most people see the U.S. as the biggest problem in the world. When you bring an incredible religious force, albeit misguided, misjudged, and you say, you're either with us or against us. There's no other way of thinking. Yeah. This is where all other people have to rise up and say, there's other ways of thinking.
Is there common ground between an Iranian president calling for death to America and an American president calling Iran part of the axis of evil?
Peace and peacemaking are central in all aspects of MCC work. So in the political Iranian scenario, how do you move from hate to understanding?
Purpose is really to get people from different religions to actually talk with each other. By us trying to prove our strength, we had to talk about eliminating them and seeing them a great danger. I mean, these are very disturbing.
In fact, it is happening. Like I have pen pals and email daily with folks in Iran that have emerged over 10 years from this relationship, and that very thing. I have people who are in Iran who are more aware of the campaign stuff going on in the U.S. than I am. They'll write and say, well, today,
Did you hear that?
Yeah, today Hillary said this, and then the reformists said that about it, and and they're telling me what's going on in Iran.
The reaction that's happening.
And there's huge reactions going on, and I find myself, writing back and saying, well, as an American and Canadian, I listen to this stuff and I figure they're just saying whatever they need to say to get elected, and you can't take it so seriously and believe that that's what they really think. But then my friends in Iran are writing back, they have no reason not to take it seriously, but it's so sad.
But are they taking it seriously? I mean, is this something that we talked about earlier as well?
I take the American rhetoric and aggression against Iran very seriously.
We are understanding deeply the pain that the Iranian people have suffered at the hands of the American foreign policy.
Peace and tranquility will only become sustainable if it's based on justice and honoring God.
Making friends in Iran. Lessons learned from Mennonites, said Matthew Pierce. And he writes, while I continue to consciously regard myself as a Christian, I cannot say that conversion did not take place. In fact, I would argue that conversion must take place. Not conversion in the sense of giving up one tradition for another, but conversion in the more literal sense, a change in character.
Person by person, trying to introduce ways of knowing and seeing the other that complicates that demonizing picture.
A lesson learned from Mennonites. Hope Washington is watching. While Israel and the worldwide Zionist movement were celebrating 60 years of Israeli independence, Jewish opponents were marking al-Nakba, the Arabic word for catastrophe.
I believe that the reason certain rabbis actually opposed the idea of the Zionist state was because in the prophecy it talks about the return to the promised land as being, you know, an event of harmony and peace and joy, and not this sort of war and oppression and struggle. And therefore they say this forceful returning to the land is not in alignment with the spirit of the prophecy to start off with. Is that correct?
Basically, Ben Gurion, I think, was the one who said, if I had a choice between having a Jew go somewhere else and dying, I'd rather they die.
And the bottom line in all of this is to make Palestinians leave the country. It's a very hard term, I know, but in a sense it's a kind of ethnic cleansing.
The United States has been the most aggressive in continually vetoing or voting against UN General Assemblies that insist that Israel adhere to international law. So the right of return is the policy of the United Nations that has been voted and re-voted more than any other policy. And yet there's never been any consequences for Israel violating international law. Nothing happens.
The two-state solution is not really a practical solution at this point.
No.
What is?
And
what's the solution?
The two-state solution is the Bantustan that they've erected with Gaza as a ghetto. A ghetto like in the time of the Nazi rule in Germany.
There is a big change going on now. I mean, increasingly, people perceive Israel as a pariah state, a state that they
outside in the world.
Well,
in the world.
there is a boycott movement worldwide.
So you're saying that the pressure has to come from the outside world.
It's a combination.
And the Palestinian resistance. I mean, without the Palestinian resistance, it's much more difficult. But there is a Palestinian resistance, and our job is to defend it and to bring to the world the news that is trying to be buried by the Zionists and by its allies, the United States, of course, that there is a Palestinian struggle.
The wall must fall.
This is what you guys are.
And that's what
living,
we do.
Testaments of that. Here are Jewish people who are saying, we don't agree. We don't accept this. And bravo to you.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.